Is it really safe to open your heart when you already have more than 60 years behind you? The answer might surprise you, and believe me, what I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes can make the difference between a fulfilled life in old age or falling into emotional traps you never imagined. As someone who has accompanied thousands of people on their heart's journey, I tell you, what you are about to hear, you will not find anywhere else. This knowledge was forged from tears, joy, and yes, also from the pain of those who have entrusted me with their most intimate stories. It doesn't matter whether you are widowed, divorced, or simply have been alone for a long time. The next few minutes could completely change your perspective on relationships in this beautiful stage of life. If your emotional and also your financial well-being is important to you, stay tuned. Press like immediately so that others can also be protected by this information, and subscribe to the Inner Lighthouse, because together we will sail toward wisdom through the mirage of late love when loneliness clouds the view. After 60, something happens inside us that few truly understand. Loneliness is not the same as it was at 30 or 40. It becomes more intense, more pressing. And that's where the first big danger lies. Did you know that 73% of people over 60 enter a new relationship primarily out of fear of loneliness and not out of true love? This number should make you pause. When loneliness becomes our main advisor, we make decisions out of desperation, not wisdom. Maria Elena, a 64-year-old woman from Guadalajara, recently told me her story. After 15 years as a widow, she met Roberto at a retirees' gathering. "Professor," she said through tears, "I fell in love with the idea of not being alone anymore, not with Roberto." After just 6 months, she sold her house to move in with him, only to find out that Roberto had 5 adult children who saw her only as a threat to their inheritance. The mirage of late love makes us see an oasis where in reality there is only sand. After years of wandering through the desert of loneliness, every shadow seems like shelter. But not every shadow protects. Some only hide us from the truth. Another factor is time pressing us. At 60, we feel we don't want to waste any more years. This pressure pushes us to rush into things that actually require time. Truly getting to know a person, their motives, their wounds, their behavior patterns, that takes time. But when the clock seems to tick against us, we often skip crucial steps. An invisible danger arises when adult children become opponents. Here's a truth few dare to say aloud. Adult children can be the biggest obstacle to your romantic happiness after 60. And not always out of love, often it's about very down-to-earth interests. Remember, when you enter a new relationship in these years, you're not just connecting 2 hearts, but 2 family systems, each with its own expectations, fears, and yes, financial claims. Adult children often see their parents' new partner as a threat to 3 things: their inheritance, their role as the main emotional support, and their comfort zone in the family. This is an explosive triangular conflict that has destroyed more late-life relationships than any illness. I remember Don Fernando, a 67-year-old retired businessman from Bogota. After 3 years as a widower, he met Esperanza, a charming 62-year-old woman. His 3 sons initially seemed supportive, but soon began a quiet, destructive campaign. "Dad, don't you think it's too soon? Are you sure she doesn't just want your money? Mum would be hurt." Emotional manipulation by adult children is one of the most effective and painful traps because it comes disguised as love and care. But often it's only about maintaining the family's status quo. And don't forget the other side. Your new partner's children can also see you as a threat. If their mother or father, as a widow or widower, was their emotional or even financial center, your arrival pushes them out of that privileged position. And then there is the trap of the unhealed past. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot love with a heart that is still bleeding. That's the truth many ignore when they go looking for love again after 60. At this age, we all carry baggage. Divorces that left scars, deaths of partners that broke our hearts, betrayal that made us mistrustful. Here lies the danger. Many confuse readiness for companionship with readiness for love. But that's a world of difference. Being ready for companionship means you can enjoy another's presence, share activities, feel less alone. Being ready for love means you can truly open yourself without projecting your old wounds onto the new person. Allow me to be very direct. If you still talk constantly about your ex, whether with love or hate, if you compare every gesture of the new person to your former partner, if you feel you are betraying someone's memory, then you are not ready for a relationship. You are only ready to repeat patterns that will make you and anyone close to you suffer. Jose Manuel, 69 years old from Mexico City, came to me in despair after his third relationship in 5 years ended in the same way. "Wise one," he told me, "they say I'm too controlling. I don't trust. I always compare." The truth was, Jose Manuel had never processed the pain of his divorce, in which his wife had betrayed him with his best friend after 30 years of marriage. The heart knows no calendar dates. Just because 2, 3, or 5 years have passed since the last relationship doesn't mean the wound has healed. Emotional healing has its own timing. Forcing it only creates more pain. The fallacy of experience, why maturity doesn't protect. Here we encounter one of the most dangerous illusions facing people after 60. The belief that age makes you immune to deception, manipulation, and poor decisions. I have enough experience. I won't be fooled like in my youth. How many times have you heard or said that yourself? The reality is more complex and frankly more dangerous. Yes, you have experience, but you also have vulnerabilities you didn't have at 20, 30, or 40. And emotional predators know this all too well. Long-term loneliness creates blind spots in judgment. After years alone, the brain literally changes in how it evaluates relationships. It becomes more forgiving, more hopeful, more willing to overlook warning signs we would have recognized instantly before. A number that should alarm you: romance fraud cases against people over 60 have risen by 300% in the last 5 years. These scammers are not amateurs, they are professionals who know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to exploit the need for love and companionship. Carmen Rosa, 71 years old from Lima, lost all her savings to Miguel, a charming widower she met through a dating app. "Wise one, I raised 5 children, ran a business for 30 years. How could I be so stupid?" The answer is simple. She wasn't stupid, she was human. And it's exactly that humanity predators live on. The silent hormone revolution. How physical changes influence our decisions. Hardly anyone speaks openly about it, but it's crucial to understanding the risks of later life relationships. Hormonal changes after 60 affect not only the body, they also change how we perceive relationships, love, and intimacy. For women, postmenopause brings changes in estrogen levels that can affect both desire and emotional perception. Some experience a new freedom, feel more confident and open to new relationships. Others struggle with dryness, physical pain, and reduced interest, which can create unexpected tensions in new partnerships. For men, the gradual decline in testosterone leads to self-esteem issues, erectile dysfunction, and a drive to prove themselves virile and desirable. This inner distress can drive romantic decisions that arise more from wounded ego than genuine love. The real danger lies in the fact that many do not share these changes with new partners, creating unrealistic expectations and frustrations that can destroy relationships which could have flourished with honesty and understanding. In addition, some medications that are often prescribed in old age affect desire, emotional responsiveness, and even mental clarity. How many important romantic decisions are made while medication is unknowingly altering our judgment? Society has taught us to see sexuality and intimacy after 60 as something ridiculous, nice, or even non-existent. This invisibility puts many older people under pressure to prove that they still can, and leads them into situations for which they are neither emotionally nor physically prepared. The illusion of lost time, when haste becomes your worst enemy. I have no time to lose. I hear this sentence constantly from people over 60 who are looking for love. It is both understandable and extremely dangerous. Understandable because awareness of one's own mortality increases with age. Dangerous because it creates an artificial urgency that clouds judgment. This time pressure causes people to speed up processes that naturally take time. Truly getting to know someone, building genuine trust, developing real compatibility, these are all steps that have their own pace. If we force them out of fear of lost time, we end up losing much more: our inner peace, our resources, and possibly years of our lives in toxic relationships. This urgency also makes us more vulnerable to quick promises and grandiose declarations of love. I've loved you since the first day. I've never felt this way before. Let's get married soon. At our age, we can't wait. These are sentences that should actually set off alarm bells, yet in the context of time pressure, they sound romantic and tempting. Think about it. If someone falls madly in love with you within a week, what guarantees that they won't fall out of love just as quickly? True love is built. It is not merely proclaimed. Dolores, 68 years old from Buenos Aires, married Raul after only 4 months of acquaintance. We didn't want to waste any time, she told me. 2 years later, in the middle of a complicated divorce, she admitted, if I had just waited a year, I would have seen that he was a functioning alcoholic, had huge debts, and saw me only as the solution to his problems. The mirage of financial security, when money becomes a magnet for problems. Here we come to one of the most delicate yet crucial points. Many people over 60 are in the best financial moment of their lives, and this makes them perfect targets for financial predators disguised as romantic partners. Anyone who owns property, receives a stable pension, has savings or assets automatically becomes attractive for reasons that go far beyond love. And it's not just about professional scammers, but also about those in financial distress who see a relationship as the solution to their money problems. Financial manipulation in later life relationships is subtle, insidious, and devastatingly effective. It begins with small emergency loans, moves on to shared expenses where you pay more and more, and ends with major financial decisions made under emotional pressure. My son urgently needs surgery. I have to pay off a debt or I'll lose my house. If we pool our resources, we could have a more comfortable old age. These are tried and tested tactics that exploit two weaknesses: your generosity and your desire for a shared future. But let me tell you something I've observed again and again in my counseling. The most effective financial manipulation is not the one that directly asks for money, but the one that creates emotional dependence through money. I've seen cases where a new partner started helping with finances, monitoring, paying bills, organizing investments, until they gradually became indispensable. At first, it's practical, even reassuring, to have someone who understands numbers, but step by step, this person takes control. And eventually, you don't even know where your own accounts stand. Maria del Carmen, 68, lived comfortably on her teacher's pension and lifelong savings. She met Alberto at a dance club, an educated man, formerly an accountant. "Let me help you optimize your finances," he suggested, after 3 months. After 6 months, Alberto had reorganized all her investments, transferred her savings to more profitable accounts in his name, and convinced her to sell her house to buy a better property together. When she finally became suspicious, Alberto had vanished with 30 years of savings. The danger doesn't only come from outside. Many people, eager to show their new relationship is serious, make hasty financial decisions that jeopardize stability built over decades. Selling property to move in together, merging bank accounts after a few months, changing wills too soon, co-signing loans, these are decisions that require years of mutual trust, not months of infatuation. And here's a hard truth I must share with you. Over 60, you no longer have decades to recover from a financial mistake. If you lose your savings at 30, you have 35 years to rebuild them. Lose your savings at 65, and that recovery time simply does not exist. That's why every financial decision in a later life relationship must be evaluated not only with the heart, but also with the cold calculator of reality. I have seen proud, independent people emotionally and financially ruined because they confused generosity with love and neediness with passion. Money in relationships after 60 is not just money, it's security, dignity, independence, and the difference between a comfortable old age and one of hardship. The trap of comparison, when the past becomes the enemy of the present. My wife would never have done that. My ex-husband was completely different in that regard. Things used to be different. Sound familiar? Comparison is one of the most effective saboteurs of relationships after 60. At this age, we all carry long stories within us, decades of relationships and ingrained habits. And this is exactly the problem. We try to force the new person into molds shaped by past experiences instead of letting the relationship take its own form. Comparisons work both ways, and both are destructive. Comparisons with idealized ex-partners doom a new relationship from the start, but even positive comparisons are dangerous. You understand me, not like my ex. This creates unrealistic expectations and forces the new partner to live up to an impossible ideal. There is also a tendency to romanticize past relationships. After years of loneliness, we often remember only the good sides and filter out the conflicts. Every new relationship then inevitably seems weaker by comparison. But comparisons are not only about past partners, but also about younger versions of ourselves. At 40, I was more romantic, I had more energy before, my body responded differently. These self-comparisons are equally destructive because they create an unattainable expectation that we and our partner should function as we did 30 years ago. Roberto, 72 years old, from Caracas, was married for 45 years before being widowed. 3 years later, he met Elena, a wonderful woman who patiently endured constant comparisons to his late wife for 2 years. "Professor," Roberto told me after Elena finally left him, "I never realized that I wanted Elena to be the ghost of my wife instead of herself." But the story has a second twist. After losing Elena, Roberto went to the opposite extreme. He swore never to compare anyone again, met Carmen, and plunged into a relationship in which he deliberately ignored all warning signs to give her a fair chance. Carmen, however, turned out to be emotionally unstable and manipulated him financially. Roberto still refused to see the signs, interpreting them as unfair comparisons. The truth is, comparisons are not the problem. Destructive comparisons are. It is normal and even healthy to view a new relationship in light of past experiences. It becomes dangerous when these comparisons become rigid, when you expect the new person to have all the virtues of the former partner, but without their flaws. I have seen couples over 60 destroy good relationships simply because the new partner cooked differently, showed affection differently, or had different daily routines. "My wife always made my coffee this way," then becomes a reason for arguments instead of an invitation to discover new forms of tenderness. And then there is the comparison with cultural standards. Many people over 60 grew up in a time when roles were more clearly defined and courting or wooing followed more predictable patterns. Today they have to navigate a world in which women take more initiative, men show more emotional vulnerability, and power relations are more balanced. Instead of opening up to these changes, many cling to comparisons with the old days. The dangers of hidden health, when illness burdens love. At 60, health becomes a determining factor in relationships. Yet many are not honest about their medical problems, creating dangerous situations and unrealistic expectations. Did you know that 40% of people over 60 hide serious health issues when starting a new relationship out of fear of rejection? Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart problems, early dementia, all of these profoundly influence the dynamics of a relationship. But out of fear of abandonment, many hide these conditions. The problem is not being ill, that is normal at this age. The problem is dishonesty, which can endanger both the life of the person affected and the emotional and financial stability of their partner. Imagine discovering after 6 months that your partner has diabetes and that you mistook their hypoglycemia for mood swings. Or finding out that your new partner's charming forgetfulness was in fact an early sign of Alzheimer's. But let me tell you something that goes beyond the obvious. Hidden health is not only about physical illness. I have seen devastating cases where people hid mental health problems, chronic depression, anxiety disorders, manic episodes, because they believed they were behind them or thought their medication had it under control. Then there is the matter of medication. Many older people take multiple drugs at the same time, which can affect their personality, emotional responsiveness, sexual desire, and even mental clarity. Starting a relationship without knowing the other person's medical situation is like steering a ship without knowing the conditions of the sea. Fernando, a 71-year-old man, met Luz Marina in a senior yoga class. She was lively, full of energy, always in a good mood. After 8 months of dating and wedding plans, Luz Marina had a severe manic episode that required hospitalization. Fernando learned that she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder 15 years earlier, but had stopped taking her medication 6 months before because she felt cured and didn't want Fernando to think she was ill. The situation worsened when Fernando discovered that during her hypomanic phases, she had compulsively spent money and accumulated debts he knew nothing about. He not only had to endure the emotional crisis of seeing his partner in the hospital, but also shoulder the financial consequences of an untreated mental illness. On the other hand, some people deliberately exploit the health weaknesses of others. Offering to be a loving caregiver can be a strategy to gain access to the life, home, and resources of a person who is beginning to need support. I have documented cases where seemingly caring individuals deliberately sought out people with health limitations, not out of compassion, but with the intent to gain control and financial advantage. As cruel as it sounds, there are predators who specifically target older people with health problems because they know that the need for care makes them more vulnerable to manipulation. Dolores, 74, suffered from severe arthritis that limited her mobility. She met Ramiro in a doctor's office where he was accompanying his sick aunt. Ramiro presented himself as a compassionate man, experienced in caring for the sick. After 6 months, he had moved in with Dolores to take better care of her. He took over her medications, her doctor's appointments, and gradually also her finances. When Dolores's children finally intervened, they discovered that Ramiro had been deliberately overdosing her to keep her confused and dependent. And then there is the issue of sexual expectations, and many people hide problems with sexuality. Erectile dysfunction, lack of lubrication, medication side effects that inhibit desire, out of shame or fear that the relationship might end before it really begins. But this concealment often leads to deep misunderstandings, feelings of rejection, and damaged self-esteem on both sides. The digital revolution, how modern technology creates new risks. Dating apps, social networks, and digital communication have revolutionized how people over 60 find love, but at the same time have brought entirely new dangers for which many are unprepared. First, there is the problem of misrepresentation. Online, it is much easier to lie than face-to-face. Photos that are 10 years old, invented stories, even completely fake identities, all are possible in the digital world. People who grew up in a time when you had to meet someone directly are often not prepared for how easy deception has become online. Then comes the artificial speed of digital intimacy. Hours of writing can create a closeness that doesn't really exist. All-night chats can simulate the feeling of a deep relationship, but often it is just two strangers exchanging digital fantasies. Scammers have perfected the art of digital seduction specifically for older people. They know exactly what words to use, what pictures to send, and how to build an emotional dynamic that takes the victim from curiosity to deep infatuation within weeks. Teresa, 66 years old from Medellin, told me how she had an intense 4-month digital relationship with David, a supposedly widowed engineer working abroad. She sent him over $1,000 for medical emergencies and travel expenses before she discovered that David was actually part of a network of scammers from another continent. But Teresa's story reveals something deeper and more disturbing, how loneliness can cause intelligent, educated people to completely turn off their critical judgment. Teresa had been a school principal, a woman used to making difficult decisions and spotting lies, but in her isolation after her husband's death, she clung so strongly to the emotional connection with David that she ignored obvious warning signs. David could never make video calls, supposedly because of connection problems. He constantly had emergencies that required immediate money. His professional photos looked like they came from a magazine. But Teresa had invested so much emotionally in this relationship that each new excuse only convinced her more. It was like a drug, she told me. Every message from him made me feel alive again. And here lies the most insidious aspect of digital scams. They don't just steal money, they steal faith in love itself. After the scam, Teresa developed such deep distrust that she rejected several real opportunities to meet people around her. The emotional damage often far exceeds the financial one, but technology also carries less obvious dangers. Social networks allow scammers to thoroughly spy on potential victims even before the first contact. They can find out where you live, what interests you have, whether you are widowed or divorced, whether you have children. Even your financial situation can be assessed based on photos. Pedro, 69 years old, regularly posted pictures of his travels, his well-kept house, his new car. Without knowing it, he created a perfect profile for scammers looking specifically for wealthy and single people. When Sophia contacted him via Facebook, she already knew exactly how to spark his interest. She shared his passion for travel, had visited the same places, and even mentioned recognizing his car in a photo. Another problem is digital dependence. I have observed older people who became not only emotionally dependent online on certain individuals, but also on the constant validation from dating apps. The sound of a new message became the only source of excitement in their everyday life, and drove them to take ever greater risks to maintain that stimulation. Technology has removed many natural protective barriers that previous generations had. In the past, meeting someone meant having mutual acquaintances, time passing, and seeing the person in different contexts. Today, you can exchange intimate messages just 5 minutes after first contact, without those social safety mechanisms. And finally, the issue of digital privacy. Many older people do not fully understand what information they reveal when using these platforms and how it can be used against them. They share real-time locations, details of their daily routine, photos of their homes, without considering the security implications. The digital revolution has democratized access to love, but also access to vulnerability. For people over 60, this means they need not only emotional strength, but also digital literacy, which they often never received. The rescuer syndrome, when love is confused with salvation. One of the most dangerous patterns I see in relationships after 60 is what I call the rescuer syndrome. At this age, many people have accumulated not only years, but also resources, stability, and a certain life wisdom. When they meet someone with financial, emotional, or family problems, there is a natural urge to help. But be careful, there is a huge difference between deciding to support a stable partner and choosing someone precisely because they need to be saved. The second option is a deadly trap disguised as virtue. The rescuer syndrome stems from several psychological factors. Many people over 60 have lived their lives for others, children, spouses, parents, employers. When the time finally comes to live for themselves, the pattern of caring for others is so deeply rooted that they don't know how to relate differently. The poor thing has been through so much, he needs someone who really understands him. With my help, he can make it. Such thoughts should raise alarm bells and not bring you closer. Because people who constantly need to be rescued usually do not want to change at all. They are looking for someone who will comfortably maintain their dysfunction, and rescuers unconsciously become enablers of destructive behavior. Moreover, relationships based on rescue are fundamentally unbalanced. One person gives constantly, while the other takes. This is not love. This is dysfunctional codependence that emotionally exhausts the rescuer and keeps the rescued stuck in immaturity. It is important to understand a key lesson. Love after 60 is no less valuable, but it is different. It requires more attention, patience, and self-awareness than ever before. It is not enough to just follow the heart. You must also engage the mind, experience, and caution. If we do not distinguish where compassion ends and exploitation begins, where nostalgia ends and comparison begins, where hope ends and illusion begins, we risk losing what is most valuable to us in this stage of life: peace, dignity, and security. Love in old age can be the purest form of love, but only if it is based on honesty, freedom, and balance. My final advice is simple. Do not rush, do not lower your boundaries, and never forget that your worth does not decrease with the years. On the contrary, you are a treasure of experiences, wisdom, and stories who deserves a partner worthy of you, not someone you need to save or who sees you only as the solution to their problems. Learn to distinguish love from illusion, attention from manipulation, and companionship from dependence. Only then will you discover that late love is not weaker or more dangerous, but can become life's most beautiful reward, if you approach it with open eyes and a healthy heart.